You wake up every day with the same quiet intention. Today, I'll do better. And yet, by the end of the day, something familiar happens again. You said something you shouldn't have. You reacted too quickly. You let your mood decide for you. You spent, agreed, or committed in a way that didn't serve your future. Not because you're weak, not because you're incapable, but because control is harder than intelligence, and no one ever trained you for it. Most people believe their problems come from the outside, from bad luck, from unfair systems, from other people, from not making enough money. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most damage in life is self-inflicted. It happens in moments so small they don't feel dangerous at the time. A careless sentence, a rushed decision, an emotional reaction, a purchase made to feel better, not to build better. And those moments add up. This audiobook is not about becoming rich overnight. It's not about manifesting money. It's not about pretending emotions don't exist. It's about learning how to control yourself before life controls you. Because if you can't control your mouth, your mind, and your mood, money will never stay with you long enough to matter. Think about it. How many opportunities were lost because of words spoken too fast? How many relationships were damaged because emotion spoke louder than intention? How many financial decisions were made when you were tired, angry, bored, or trying to impress? No one teaches you this growing up. You're taught how to talk, but not when to stop. You're taught how to think, but not how to direct your thoughts. You're taught how to feel, but not how to lead your emotions. And then you're surprised when life feels chaotic. Control is not suppression. It's not becoming cold. It's not killing your personality. Control is clarity under pressure. It's restraint when reaction feels easier. It's choosing long-term respect over short-term relief. The people who seem calm in chaos aren't lucky. They're trained. They don't speak less because they have nothing to say. They speak less because they understand the cost of words. They don't avoid emotions because they're numb. They pause because they know emotions pass. But consequences don't. They don't make money because they chase it harder. They make money because they make fewer impulsive decisions. This audiobook is about that discipline. You'll learn why your mouth leaks power when it runs unchecked. Why an undisciplined mind creates financial chaos. Why mood swings quietly sabotage progress. And how money, in the end, is a mirror, not a reward. A mirror of your habits, your patience, your restraint, your standards. This is not motivation. Motivation fades. This is structure. A way of thinking that helps you slow down when everything pushes you to react. A way of speaking that earns respect without raising your voice. A way of handling emotion without letting it hijack your future. And a way of dealing with money from calm, not urgency. If you've ever felt like you're intelligent but inconsistent, capable but scattered, driven but exhausted by your own reactions, this is for you. You don't need more ambition. You don't need more information. You don't even need more confidence. You need control, not over other people, not over outcomes, over yourself. Because once you master that, everything else becomes simpler. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Control your mouth. Why words leak power. Every time you open your mouth, something leaves you. It might be respect, it might be authority, it might be leverage. Or, if you're careful, it might be intention. Most people never think about this. They talk to release pressure. They talk to fill silence. They talk to feel seen. And without realizing it, they give away power in small daily moments that seem harmless. A joke said too early, an opinion offered too fast, a complaint spoken without restraint, a promise made just to avoid discomfort. None of these moments feel destructive on their own. But stacked together, they shape how people treat you and how life responds to you. Your mouth is not neutral. It is a tool, and like any tool, when used without control, it causes damage. Think about the people you respect most. They don't speak constantly. They don't explain themselves unnecessarily. They don't rush to comment on everything happening around them. When they speak, there's weight behind it. When they're silent, there's presence. That's not coincidence. That's discipline. Most people talk themselves into weaker positions. They overshare plans that aren't ready. They announce goals before building foundations. They vent emotions instead of processing them. And then they wonder why others don't take them seriously. Words are easy. Restraint is not. Every careless sentence trains people how to treat you. When you complain often, you train others to see you as fragile. When you over-explain, you train them to doubt your confidence. When you gossip, you train them not to trust you. When you promise too much, you train yourself to disrespect your own word. And self-disrespect is expensive. It costs you credibility. It costs you focus. It costs you money. Because people who can't control their mouth usually can't control their spending, their time, or their reactions either. The same impulse that pushes words out without filtering also pushes decisions forward without thinking. Silence, on the other hand, creates space. Space to observe instead of react. Space to think instead of justify. Space to choose instead of defend. This doesn't mean becoming quiet out of fear. It means becoming selective out of strength. Strong people don't talk to impress. They talk to move things forward. And sometimes, the most powerful move is not speaking at all. Notice how often people explain things no one asked about. That's insecurity leaking through language. Notice how often people argue just to feel right. That's ego begging for validation. Notice how often people announce their next move. That's impatience pretending to be confidence. Control starts with noticing these patterns in yourself, without judgment, but without excuses. Ask yourself, do I speak to add value or to release tension? Do I talk because it's necessary or because silence makes me uncomfortable? Do my words reflect intention or impulse? If you're honest, you'll see how often your mouth moves faster than your standards. Here's the principle you need to remember. If you can't control your mouth, you can't control your outcomes. Money follows reliability. Reliability follows discipline. Discipline starts with speech. People trust those who mean what they say and say less of it. They respect those whose words are consistent with their actions. They follow those who don't need to convince, explain, or perform. This is why silence has always been associated with authority. Judges pause before speaking. Leaders choose words carefully. Those with real leverage don't rush to fill the air. They let moments breathe. This chapter is not asking you to become cold or distant. It's asking you to become intentional. Before you speak, pause for 1 second. That second is everything. In that pause, ask, is this necessary? Is this true? Is this useful right now? If it's not, let it go. That pause alone will change how people experience you. You'll be interrupted less, questioned less, dismissed less. And slowly, something shifts. You begin to respect yourself more. And when you respect yourself, your decisions improve, your boundaries strengthen, your finances stabilize. Because control is contagious. Once you practice it in speech, it spreads to thought, emotion, and action. This chapter is your foundation. You're learning to close the first leak. Speak less, mean more, and let your silence do some of the work. That's how real control begins. Chapter 2. Silence is a weapon. The power of not reacting. Silence is misunderstood. Most people think silence means weakness. They assume that if you don't respond immediately, you've lost. If you don't defend yourself, you agree. If you don't speak up, you're invisible. That belief is one of the biggest traps in modern life. Silence is not the absence of power. It is the presence of control. The need to react instantly is not confidence. It is compulsion. It comes from discomfort, with uncertainty, with tension, with not being seen or validated right away. When someone provokes you, questions you, disrespects you, or challenges you, the instinct to respond immediately feels almost physical. Your body tightens, your thoughts rush. Your mouth wants to move, and that moment is exactly where power is either lost or gained. Most people give it away. They argue when they should observe. They explain when they should pause. They react when they should wait. And by doing so, they let other people control their emotional state, their behavior, and often their decisions. Silence breaks that chain. When you don't react right away, you interrupt the emotional momentum. You step out of the script. You force the other person and the situation itself to slow down. That pause creates uncertainty, and uncertainty shifts leverage. This is why silence feels uncomfortable. It removes predictability. People expect reactions. They expect defense, emotion, noise. When none comes, they are left facing themselves. Their words hang in the air without reinforcement. Their aggression loses fuel. Their manipulation has nowhere to land. Silence exposes intention. It reveals who was trying to provoke, who was trying to dominate, who was trying to pull you into emotional labor. And most importantly, it gives you time to think clearly instead of emotionally. That time is priceless. Think about how many decisions you regret were made right after an emotional spike. An angry message sent too fast. A sharp reply that damaged a relationship. A financial choice made to prove something. A commitment made just to end discomfort. Silence would have saved you from all of them. Not forever, just for a moment. And a moment is often enough. Silence is a weapon because it protects your internal state. It keeps your nervous system calm while others escalate. It allows you to choose a response instead of being forced into one. This is not about passivity, it's about timing. The most dangerous people are not loud. They are patient. They wait. They listen. They gather information while others expose themselves. And when they finally speak, their words land with precision. You don't need to intimidate anyone. You don't need to win every exchange. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. You need to protect your energy. Because energy wasted on unnecessary reactions is energy stolen from focus, from discipline, from long-term thinking. And without long-term thinking, money slips through your fingers no matter how much you make. Silence is especially powerful in moments of provocation. When someone tries to rush you, pressure you, or pull you into urgency, your refusal to respond immediately is a quiet statement. I am not controlled by this moment. That statement alone changes dynamics. People who are easily provoked are easy to manipulate. They can be baited into arguments, rushed into decisions, and pressured into spending, agreeing, or explaining. People who pause are harder to move. They decide on their terms. This chapter is about building that pause into your behavior. Not once, not occasionally, but as a habit. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to make silence dramatic. You simply stop feeding unnecessary exchanges. You stop replying to everything. You stop filling every gap with words. And something subtle happens. Your presence becomes heavier. Your reactions become rarer. Your decisions become cleaner. People start listening more closely when you speak because they hear you less often. They stop testing boundaries as frequently because they don't get instant feedback. And you begin to feel a calm that doesn't depend on external validation. This calm is not emotional numbness. It is emotional leadership. You are no longer dragged by moods, comments, or impulses. You are choosing when to engage and when to step back. That choice gives you clarity, and clarity leads to better outcomes, including financial ones. Because money is deeply tied to patience, to timing, to the ability to wait instead of chase, to say not now instead of right now. Silence trains that muscle. Every time you don't react immediately, you strengthen self-control. Every time you let a moment pass without filling it, you reclaim authority over yourself. This is how control compounds. First in speech, then in emotion, then in decision-making. Silence is not empty. It is strategic space, and once you learn to use it, you stop bleeding power in places you never noticed before. You don't need to be louder. You need to be steadier. That's the weapon. Chapter 3. Control your mind. Stop letting thoughts run. Wild your mind is the most powerful tool you own. And for most people, it's completely unmanaged. Thoughts appear, emotions attach, stories form, decisions follow. All of it happens so fast that you assume it's you. But most of the time, it's not choice, it's habit. An undisciplined mind doesn't feel dangerous. It feels busy. It feels active. It feels like thinking. But activity is not clarity, and movement is not direction. If your thoughts run unchecked, your life will too. Most people don't suffer from lack of intelligence. They suffer from lack of control over their attention. Their mind jumps from worry to memory, from comparison to fear, from fantasy to regret. And in that chaos, decisions are made. Bad ones. You can't build stability on a noisy mind. You can't make long-term plans with short-term thinking. You can't handle pressure when your thoughts spiral the moment discomfort appears. An uncontrolled mind magnifies problems. A bill becomes a crisis. A mistake becomes an identity. A delay becomes a threat. And when the mind feels threatened, it seeks relief, not solutions. That's when people distract themselves. That's when they spend impulsively. That's when they abandon discipline for comfort. The mind wants escape. Control wants progress. The first thing you must understand is this. Not every thought deserves your attention. Your mind produces ideas the same way your lungs produce breath. Automatically. Constantly. Without asking permission. The mistake is believing that every thought is meaningful, urgent, or true. It's not. Most thoughts are noise. Leftovers. Reactions. Echoes of things you heard, feared, or imagined. If you treat all of them as commands, you become reactive, and reactive people are predictable, emotional, and easy to manipulate. Control begins when you stop identifying with every thought that passes through you. You don't argue with clouds in the sky. You don't chase every sound in the street, yet you chase every thought in your head as if it were a fact. That chase exhausts you. Mental discipline is not about forcing positive thinking. It's about choosing useful thinking. It's about slowing down the internal rush long enough to ask one question. Does this thought move me forward or pull me sideways? If it pulls you sideways, let it pass. This is difficult at first because the mind resists stillness. Chaos feels familiar. Silence feels threatening. When you stop feeding every thought, the mind protests. It throws louder worries, more dramatic scenarios, old regrets. That's normal. That resistance is not a sign you're doing it wrong. It's proof you're finally taking control. A disciplined mind doesn't panic under pressure. It narrows focus. It prioritizes. It waits before reacting. That waiting is where good decisions are made. Think about money again. People don't lose money because they lack information. They lose money because they act on unfiltered thoughts. Fear tells them to sell. Excitement tells them to buy. Comparison tells them they're behind. Ego tells them to prove something. All mental noise. Control your mind, and financial behavior changes naturally. You stop chasing. You stop reacting to headlines, trends, and opinions. You start acting from principles instead of moods. This chapter is about reclaiming your attention. Your attention is currency. Where you spend it determines who you become. If your mind is constantly occupied with anxiety, distraction, or imaginary futures, you're broke on focus. Even if your bank account looks fine, you don't need to think more. You need to think less, but better. One clear thought executed consistently beats 1,000 unstructured ideas. Train yourself to pause before engaging with a thought. Observe it. Label it. Then decide whether it deserves action. This creates distance. Distance creates choice. Choice creates control. Over time, your mind becomes quieter, not empty, but organized. You begin to notice patterns instead of being trapped inside them. You respond instead of react. You plan instead of worry. And with that calm comes something rare in modern life. Patience. Patience allows you to delay gratification, to tolerate boredom, to stay consistent when nothing feels exciting. Those traits don't look impressive, but they build everything impressive. An uncontrolled mind seeks stimulation. A controlled mind seeks progress. This is where real confidence comes from. Not loud thoughts, not constant affirmation, but the quiet certainty that you can direct yourself when it matters most. Control your mind, and you stop being pushed around by impulses, fears, and imagined pressure. You move slower, but you move forward. This chapter is not about perfection. You will still have negative thoughts. You will still feel doubt. The difference is that they no longer drive the vehicle. You do. And once your mind is under control, the next battlefield reveals itself, your emotions. That's where most people lose everything they built. Chapter 4. Discipline beats intelligence. Why control outperforms talent. Intelligence is admired. Discipline is underestimated. From an early age, you're taught to value being smart, to think faster, understand more, speak convincingly. Intelligence is praised, rewarded, and displayed. Discipline, on the other hand, is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't look impressive in conversation, and because of that, most people ignore it until life tests them. Because when pressure appears, intelligence alone collapses. Only discipline holds. You can be brilliant and still inconsistent. You can understand exactly what to do and still not do it. You can analyze every option perfectly and still choose the wrong one in the moment that matters. That gap between knowing and doing is where most people fail. Discipline is what closes it. Discipline is not motivation. Motivation is emotional and temporary. It comes and goes with mood, energy, and circumstances. Discipline stays when motivation disappears. It shows up when things are boring, uncomfortable, repetitive, or unrewarding. That's why discipline builds outcomes intelligence can't maintain. An intelligent person may start strong. A disciplined person finishes. And in life, finishing matters more than starting. Look closely at the people who are consistently ahead. Not just once, but over years. They aren't always the smartest in the room. They aren't the loudest, the most creative, or the most confident. But they are predictable in one way. They do what they said they would do, even when it's inconvenient. That reliability compounds. Discipline turns small actions into momentum. It turns structure into freedom. And over time, it quietly outperforms raw talent. Most financial problems are not caused by lack of intelligence. They are caused by lack of discipline. People know they shouldn't overspend. They know they should save. They know they should plan, wait, and be patient. But knowing doesn't stop impulse. Discipline does. Impulse is emotional. Discipline is intentional. When intelligence operates without discipline, it becomes dangerous. It rationalizes bad behavior. It justifies shortcuts. It explains away inconsistency. A smart mind can always find a reason to break its own rules. A disciplined mind doesn't negotiate. This is why discipline feels restrictive at first. It removes options. It says no before the mind can talk itself into yes. It creates boundaries around behavior, so decisions don't have to be remade every day. And that removal of choice is powerful. Every time you rely on intelligence alone, you drain mental energy, deciding again what you already know. Every time you rely on discipline, you conserve energy and build consistency. Consistency creates trust. Trust creates opportunity. Opportunity creates income. There's nothing glamorous about discipline. It doesn't trend. It doesn't inspire applause. But it creates results that motivation and intelligence alone cannot sustain. Discipline means doing the boring thing even when no one is watching. It means repeating the same small action long after the excitement fades. It means holding yourself to standards even when you could get away with less. And most people avoid it because it feels like sacrifice. But discipline is not sacrifice. It's exchange. You trade short-term comfort for long-term stability. You trade momentary pleasure for lasting control. You trade chaos for structure, and structure, once built, protects you. A disciplined person doesn't need to rely on willpower all day. They've already decided who they are and how they operate. Their behavior is automated by standards, not driven by emotion. This is especially important when it comes to money. Intelligent people often believe they can outthink risk. Disciplined people reduce risk before it appears. They don't rely on perfect timing or clever moves. They rely on systems. Systems beat insight. Habits beat bursts of effort. This chapter is asking you to shift your identity. Stop seeing discipline as punishment. Stop seeing it as limitation. Start seeing it as leverage. Leverage over your time, leverage over your behavior, leverage over your future. You don't need to become smarter. You need to become steadier. Because intelligence without discipline creates potential. Discipline without intelligence creates progress. And when both are present, outcomes become inevitable. Control is not about forcing yourself every day. It's about setting rules once and following them without debate. That's how discipline removes friction. That's how it protects you from yourself. This chapter marks a turning point. You're no longer relying on how you feel. You're no longer waiting for clarity to appear. You're building structure that holds even when clarity disappears. Discipline is not exciting, but it is dependable. And in a world driven by impulse, dependability is rare and valuable. This is how control begins to compound. Chapter 5. Control your mood. Emotional decisions are expensive. Your mood is not harmless. Most people treat emotions as something private, personal, and temporary. They assume feelings rise, peak, and disappear without consequences. But emotions don't stay contained inside your body. They spill into your words, your timing, your judgment, and your spending. And when mood takes control, the price is always paid later. You don't lose money when you're calm. You lose money when you're emotional. Anger makes you reckless. Sadness makes you careless. Excitement makes you impulsive. Boredom makes you restless. None of these states are wrong. They are human. The danger appears when you let them decide for you. Most regret can be traced back to a moment of heightened emotion. A message sent when anger was still hot, a purchase made to fill emptiness, a decision rushed to escape discomfort. At the time, it felt justified. Later, it feels obvious. Mood narrows your vision. It pulls attention toward relief instead of consequence. When emotions are high, long-term thinking disappears. The future becomes distant. The present demands action. That's why emotional people are predictable. They repeat the same patterns because they keep deciding from the same states. Control is not about suppressing emotion. Suppression creates pressure. Pressure explodes. Control is about not acting while emotion is loud. This is a critical distinction. You can feel everything and still do nothing. You can be angry and still stay silent. You can be excited and still wait. You can be sad and still protect your future. That pause between feeling and acting is where maturity lives. Most people don't pause. They act to change how they feel, not to improve their situation. They spend to feel better. They react to feel powerful. They agree to feel accepted. They quit to feel relief. And later, they wonder why their life feels unstable. Your mood is temporary. The consequences of your actions are not. This is especially visible in money behavior. Emotional spending doesn't come from greed. It comes from discomfort. People buy not because they need something, but because they need a feeling, comfort, excitement, status, distraction. Financial discipline collapses the moment mood leads. A controlled person separates feelings from decisions. They allow emotions to exist without letting them vote. They observe mood like weather, noticeable, real, but not something you reorganize your life around. This takes practice. The first step is awareness. Begin noticing how often your urge to act is tied to how you feel, not to what makes sense. Ask yourself, if I felt calm right now, Would I still make this choice? If the answer is no, wait. Waiting is uncomfortable. But discomfort is cheaper than regret. Mood also affects how you deal with people. When you're tired or irritated, small things feel personal. Neutral comments feel like attacks. Simple problems feel disrespectful. And in those moments, relationships are damaged unnecessarily. Controlled people don't trust their mood to tell them the truth. They trust patterns, not feelings. They know that how they feel today is not a reliable predictor of what they'll value tomorrow. This doesn't make them emotionally cold. It makes them emotionally stable. Stability is rare, and it creates safety for yourself and for others. People feel safe around those who don't swing wildly between reactions. They trust those who don't let moods dictate behavior, and trust has value. Control your mood, and your life becomes less dramatic. Fewer crises, fewer apologies, fewer explanations. Your days become quieter, but more effective. This chapter is not asking you to deny emotion. It's asking you to delay action. Let emotion pass before you decide. Let intensity cool before you commit. Let clarity return before you respond. The strongest people feel deeply. They just don't act blindly. Over time, this discipline rewires your default behavior. You stop chasing relief. You stop reacting for release. You stop making decisions that feel good now and cost you later. And as your mood stabilizes, something else happens. Your finances stabilize too, because money favors calm. It stays with those who don't panic. It grows with those who can wait. Control your mood, and you stop leaking energy, credibility, and resources through emotional cracks. This is how self-mastery deepens. You are no longer ruled by what you feel. You are guided by what you choose. And that choice, repeated daily, changes everything. Chapter 6. Calm is a financial skill. Why stability beats speed. Calm is not a personality trait. It is a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained or neglected. Most people underestimate calm because it doesn't look productive. It doesn't rush. It doesn't react. It doesn't announce itself. In a world that rewards speed, urgency, and constant movement, calm appears passive. It isn't. Calm is what allows clear judgment when everything else is noisy. When pressure rises, most people speed up. They talk faster, decide faster, spend faster, agree faster. They believe urgency equals effectiveness. In reality, urgency often signals fear. Fear of missing out, fear of falling behind, fear of losing control. And fear is expensive. Calm people don't move faster under pressure. They slow down, not because they don't care, but because they understand what pressure does to judgment. They know that speed without clarity creates mistakes that take far longer to fix. This is why calm is directly connected to money. Financial stability is built on timing, patience, and restraint. Panic destroys all three. When emotions spike, people sell too early, buy too late, commit too quickly, and exit too suddenly. They mistake motion for progress and action for control. Calm corrects that. Calm gives you the ability to sit with uncertainty without reacting to it. And uncertainty is unavoidable in life, in work, and especially in money. Markets move. Opportunities fluctuate. Plans delay. If your nervous system can't tolerate uncertainty, your decisions will always be reactive. Reactive decisions feel decisive in the moment. They also age badly. Calm is what allows you to wait for better information instead of forcing closure. It allows you to say, "not yet," when others rush. It allows you to hold your position when others panic. This doesn't mean never acting. It means acting from clarity, not from pressure. Most people confuse calm with confidence. They assume calm people are confident because things are going well for them. Often, it's the opposite. Things go well because they remain calm. Calm protects your thinking. Calm protects your timing. Calm protects your resources. Notice how stress changes your behavior. Your breathing shortens. Your attention narrows. Your tolerance drops. In that state, Your brain is not optimized for long-term planning. It's optimized for survival, and survival mode is terrible at building wealth. Survival mode wants relief now. Calm wants sustainability. This is why many people earn money and still feel unstable. Their income rises, but their nervous system doesn't. They react to every fluctuation as if it's a threat. More money doesn't fix that. Control does. Calm is control at the physiological level. When you learn to regulate your internal state, you stop making decisions just to escape discomfort. You stop rushing into things to feel secure. You stop chasing certainty where none exists. Instead, you develop tolerance. Tolerance for delay. Tolerance for boredom. Tolerance for ambiguity. These traits don't look impressive, but they are the foundation of every stable outcome. Calm also changes how others respond to you. People trust those who don't panic. They listen to those who don't rush. They follow those who don't escalate unnecessarily. In business, in negotiation, and in life, calm signals competence. It says, I am not overwhelmed by this moment. That signal has value. You cannot fake calm for long. It comes from practice, from repeatedly choosing regulation over reaction, from learning how to slow your body before you try to solve problems with your mind. This chapter is not asking you to remove urgency from your life. It's asking you to remove urgency from your decision-making. There is a difference. You can move quickly from a calm place. You can act decisively without acting emotionally. You can be serious without being frantic. Calm allows you to see second-order consequences. It lets you think beyond the immediate outcome and consider what this decision sets in motion next week, next month, next year. Most people never ask that question because they're too busy reacting. Calm creates that space. And over time, calm compounds. Fewer mistakes, fewer reversals, fewer emotional cleanups. Less wasted energy. Your life becomes quieter, not because it's empty, but because it's intentional. This is why calm people often appear lucky. They're not avoiding problems. They're avoiding unnecessary ones. Money stays where calm lives. Opportunities favor those who don't chase them desperately. Stability grows around those who don't destabilize themselves. Control your calm, and you gain a silent advantage most people never develop. Not speed, not intensity, but steadiness. And steadiness, in the long run, always wins. Chapter 7. How Self-Control Creates Money. Wealth is a byproduct, not a chase. Money does not respond to desire. It responds to behavior. This is one of the hardest truths to accept because desire feels active. It feels ambitious. It feels like effort. But desire alone has no structure. And without structure, money slips through your hands no matter how hard you chase it. Self-control is what gives behavior shape. Most people think money problems are external. Low income, bad timing, the economy, other people's decisions. And while circumstances matter, they are rarely the deciding factor. The deciding factor is how consistently you act when no one is forcing you to. Self-control determines that. People with self-control don't make better decisions once in a while. They make fewer bad ones repeatedly. That difference compounds quietly over time. They don't spend when they're emotional. They don't commit when they're uncertain. They don't chase when they're anxious. They don't quit when things feel slow. They wait. And waiting is not passive. Waiting is disciplined restraint in a world addicted to instant relief. Money rewards that restraint. Think about how wealth is actually built. Not in dramatic moments, but in unremarkable ones. Choosing not to buy, choosing not to react, choosing not to rush, choosing to repeat boring behaviors long after excitement fades. None of that looks impressive in the moment. But it builds something rare, reliability. Reliable people are trusted. Trusted people are given responsibility. Responsibility creates leverage. Leverage creates income. This is why money flows toward those who are stable, not those who are loud. Toward those who can delay gratification, not those who demand immediate reward. toward those who can tolerate discomfort without collapsing into impulse. Self-control is the invisible skill behind all of that. When you control yourself, you stop leaking resources through small daily decisions. You stop bleeding money through convenience, impatience, and emotional spending. You stop saying yes to things that drain time and energy but add nothing to your future. And when the leaks stop, progress becomes possible. Most people focus on earning more. Few focus on losing less to themselves. That's the shift this chapter is asking you to make. Wealth is not created by dramatic wins. It's preserved by quiet discipline. The ability to maintain consistency when nothing is exciting. The ability to protect long-term goals from short-term moods. This is why self-control often looks boring from the outside. But boring is powerful. Boring is repeatable. Boring compounds. A person without self-control must rely on motivation, and motivation is unstable. It depends on mood, energy, and circumstances. A person with self-control relies on standards. Standards don't negotiate. Standards decide in advance. You don't ask yourself every day whether you'll overspend, overreact, or abandon discipline. You already decided who you are and how you operate. That decision removes friction. It saves energy. It creates consistency. Consistency creates momentum. Momentum attracts opportunity. This is also why money often stays away from chaotic people. Not because they're unworthy, but because instability repels trust. Investors, employers, partners, and systems all respond to predictability. They want to know what to expect from you. Self-control makes you predictable in the best way. You show up when you say you will. You follow through when it's inconvenient. You don't collapse under pressure. You don't disappear when results take time. That reliability has value. This chapter is not telling you to obsess over money. Obsession creates pressure, and pressure leads to poor decisions. It's telling you to focus on control and let money become a side effect. When you stop chasing money, you start building the traits that attract it. Patience, restraint, consistency, clarity. Money follows those traits because they create environments where growth is sustainable. You don't need to think about money every day. You need to act in ways that respect it. Respect means not wasting it. Respect means not using it to regulate emotion. Respect means not risking it to satisfy ego. Self-control creates that respect, and once respect is established, money stops feeling fragile. It stops slipping away during emotional storms. It stops being a source of anxiety and becomes a tool, a neutral tool. That neutrality is powerful. It means money no longer controls your mood. Your mood no longer controls your decisions, and your decisions finally align with your long-term goals. This is how self-control turns into freedom, not freedom to spend recklessly, freedom to choose deliberately. Wealth is not something you chase harder. It's something you stop sabotaging. And self-control is how you stop. This chapter closes a loop. Control your mouth. Control your mind. Control your mood. And money begins to make sense, not because you forced it, but because you finally became someone it can stay with. Chapter 8. Delayed Gratification. The discipline that separates builders from chasers. Everything you want in life is on the other side of waiting. That sentence sounds simple, almost obvious, and yet most people spend their entire lives running from it. They don't lack ambition. They lack patience. Delayed gratification is the ability to feel the pull of immediate reward and still choose to wait. It is the discipline of saying no to what feels good now, in favor of what will matter later. And in a world engineered for instant relief, this skill has become rare. Rare skills create rare outcomes. Most people live by the same invisible rule. If it feels uncomfortable, escape it. If boredom appears, distract. If frustration rises, react. If desire shows up, satisfy it. This pattern trains the nervous system to avoid delay at all costs. And avoidance has a price. Short-term rewards steal from long-term progress. Every time you choose convenience over consistency, pleasure over patience, you mortgage your future for momentary relief. The trade feels small in the moment. Over time, it becomes your entire life. Delayed gratification reverses that trade. It teaches you to sit with discomfort without collapsing into impulse, to tolerate boredom without seeking stimulation, to stay consistent even when nothing is rewarding yet. This is why builders and chasers live in different realities. Chasers want results fast. They jump from idea to idea, strategy to strategy, purchase to purchase. They mistake motion for progress and excitement for growth. When things slow down, they assume something is wrong. Builders expect slowness. They plan for it. They understand that anything meaningful grows at a pace the ego finds unbearable. Instead of escaping delay, they use it. They build during quiet periods. They refine when no one is watching. They repeat actions long after novelty disappears. That repetition compounds. Delayed gratification is not about deprivation. It's about alignment. You're choosing to align today's behavior with tomorrow's outcome. You're refusing to let the present moment hijack your future. This is especially important with money. Impulse spending is simply impatience disguised as reward. It's the belief that feeling good now is worth weakening later stability. People don't overspend because they don't understand math. They overspend because waiting feels intolerable. Delayed gratification trains you to tolerate that wait. It shifts your identity from someone who reacts to urges to someone who observes them. You stop asking, "Can I have this now?" and start asking, "Is this worth delaying what I want more?" That question changes everything. Most people never ask it. They let desire decide. Builders don't. They understand that discipline today buys freedom later. Not dramatic freedom, but quiet freedom. The freedom to say no. The freedom to walk away. The freedom to choose without pressure. Delayed gratification also reshapes how you approach work and progress. You stop expecting immediate validation. You stop measuring success by quick feedback. You begin trusting process over emotion. That trust is stabilizing. When you no longer need instant results to stay committed, you become unstoppable. You keep going when others quit. You stay focused when others chase shortcuts. And slowly, without spectacle, you move ahead. This chapter is not asking you to enjoy waiting. Waiting is rarely enjoyable. It's asking you to respect it. Waiting is where discipline grows. Waiting is where standards are tested. Waiting is where character is revealed. Anyone can stay disciplined when rewards are immediate. Very few can do it when progress is invisible. Those few build everything. Delayed gratification also protects you from burnout. When you stop demanding immediate payoff from every effort, you stop emotionally over-investing in outcomes you can't control. You focus on inputs, on habits, on consistency. That focus creates peace. You no longer feel cheated by slow progress. You expect it. You no longer panic when things take longer. You planned for it. You no longer sabotage yourself when results don't appear right away. You stay. This is where most people fail, not because they aren't capable, but because they are impatient. They abandon the process right before it starts working. They mistake silence for failure. They confuse delay with denial. Delayed gratification teaches you to wait without weakening, to hold vision without rushing it, to stay disciplined without applause, to keep standards when no one enforces them. This discipline doesn't just build wealth. It builds confidence, real confidence, the kind that doesn't need reassurance because it's grounded in self-trust. You trust yourself because you've proven you can wait. You trust yourself because you don't give in easily. You trust yourself because your actions are consistent. That trust is priceless. In the end, delayed gratification is not about what you deny yourself. It's about what you protect. You protect your focus. You protect your future. You protect the life you're building from the impatience that ruins so many others. This chapter prepares you for the final shift, from chasing outcomes to embodying control. Because once you master waiting, very little can rush you. and very little can stop you. Chapter 9. Stop impressing. Start building. Why quiet progress? Wins, the need to impress is expensive. It costs money. It costs focus. It costs time. And most of all, it costs direction. Many people don't realize how much of their behavior is driven by the desire to be seen, validated, or admired. They spend, speak, post, and decide with an audience in mind, even when no one is really watching. Impressing feels productive. It feels like progress. But it's not. It's performance. Building is different. Building happens quietly. It happens without applause. It happens when results are too small to show and too slow to celebrate. And because of that, most people avoid it. They choose visibility over substance, attention over accumulation. That choice shapes everything. People who try to impress spend to signal success instead of creating it. They upgrade lifestyle before upgrading stability. They talk about plans instead of executing them. They announce milestones that haven't been earned yet. They pay for it later. Building requires patience. It asks you to delay recognition, to tolerate being underestimated, to work without constant feedback. And that discomfort drives many people back to performance. But performance doesn't compound. Building does. Quiet progress allows mistakes without public pressure. It allows learning without embarrassment. It allows growth without comparison. When no one is watching, you can focus on doing things right instead of doing things loudly. This is especially true with money. When your goal is to impress, money becomes a prop. You use it to create an image, to signal belonging, to prove worth. That turns money into a liability. It leaves faster than it arrives because its purpose is emotional, not strategic. Builders use money differently. They see it as a resource, not a statement. They care less about how it looks and more about how it works. They don't rush to display outcomes because they're focused on increasing capacity. Capacity is invisible, but it's powerful. Capacity means margin. Margin means options. Options mean freedom. Impressing reduces margin. It locks you into appearances you have to maintain. It creates pressure to keep up, to upgrade, to perform. And pressure is the enemy of calm decision-making. Building removes that pressure. When you stop trying to impress, you stop comparing. When you stop comparing, you stop rushing. When you stop rushing, your decisions improve. And improved decisions, repeated over time, change your trajectory. This chapter is asking you to shift your orientation from external validation to internal standards, from appearance to substance, from noise to consistency. This shift is uncomfortable because it feels like stepping back. It feels like being unseen. But in reality, it's stepping forward, away from distraction. Most people confuse visibility with progress. They believe if something looks impressive, it must be effective. But many of the most stable outcomes are built in silence. Wealth grows quietly. Skills develop privately. Discipline strengthens without announcement. The loud phase comes later, if it comes at all. This is why some people seem to rise suddenly. They didn't. They were building when no one was paying attention, and when results finally became visible, they looked effortless. They weren't. They were patient. Stop announcing. Stop proving. Stop performing. Start accumulating. Start refining. Start repeating. Building is repetitive. It doesn't stimulate the ego. It doesn't provide instant feedback, but it creates something solid enough to last. When you stop impressing, you also stop needing approval. You stop letting other people's opinions influence your pace. You move according to your own standards, not social pressure. That independence is rare, and it's valuable. Because people who don't need to impress are harder to manipulate. They don't overspend to belong. They don't rush decisions to prove competence. They don't speak to be noticed. They move when it makes sense. Quiet progress protects you from burnout. It allows you to work sustainably, to grow steadily, to recover from mistakes without public shame. That sustainability matters more than intensity. This chapter is not telling you to hide, it's telling you to delay display. Build first, show later. Or don't show at all. Your life does not need an audience. Your progress does not need validation. Your future does not need approval. When you stop impressing, energy returns to what matters. Focus sharpens. Decisions slow down. Money stops leaking into image maintenance, and building becomes your default. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. This is how control shows itself. Not in loud wins, but in durable outcomes. And durability is the true measure of success. Chapter 10. Become a controlled person. When self-mastery becomes identity, control is not something you do once. It is something you become. Most people treat self-control as a temporary effort, a phase, a challenge, something to apply when things feel out of hand. They try to be disciplined for a while, then return to old habits the moment pressure fades. That approach never works. Real control is not situational, it's structural. It lives in identity, not in bursts of willpower. When control becomes who you are, decisions stop feeling heavy. You don't debate every choice. You don't negotiate with impulses. You act according to standards that are already set. This chapter is about that shift. Becoming a controlled person means you no longer rely on mood to guide behavior. You no longer wait for clarity to appear before acting. You don't need motivation to do what's necessary. You operate from principle. Principles simplify life. They remove constant decision-making. They reduce emotional friction. They protect you when you're tired, stressed, or tempted. Instead of asking, "What do I feel like doing?" you ask, "What does someone like me do in this situation?" That question is powerful. Identity drives behavior far more reliably than desire. When you see yourself as someone who is measured, patient, and disciplined, actions align naturally. You don't force control. You express it. A controlled person doesn't rush. They don't overshare. They don't chase validation. They don't react emotionally under pressure, not because they're suppressing themselves, but because chaos no longer feels familiar. Most people live in reaction. Their days are shaped by messages, moods, demands, and impulses. A controlled person designs their days. They decide in advance how they respond to stress, temptation, and uncertainty. That predecision is freedom. It frees mental energy. It frees emotional bandwidth. It frees attention for things that matter. Control doesn't make life smaller. It makes it cleaner. Cleaner thoughts, cleaner choices, cleaner finances, cleaner relationships. When control becomes identity, you stop oscillating between extremes. No more cycles of overcommitment and burnout. No more bursts of discipline followed by collapse. No more emotional swings dictating behavior. Consistency replaces chaos. This consistency is what creates trust, both internally and externally. You trust yourself because you keep your word to yourself. Others trust you because your behavior is predictable in the best way. Predictability is underrated. It creates safety. Safety creates opportunity. This is why controlled people are often given more responsibility, not because they demand it, but because they can handle it. They don't panic when things go wrong. They don't need constant reassurance. They don't destabilize environments with emotional volatility. They hold. Holding is a skill. Holding silence when provoked. Holding discipline when bored. Holding patience when progress is slow. Holding standards when shortcuts appear. Most people drop something the moment it gets heavy. Controlled people carry weight longer. This chapter is not asking you to become rigid or joyless. Control does not remove enjoyment. It removes regret. It removes unnecessary damage. It removes the constant recovery from self-inflicted wounds. Joy becomes cleaner, too, earned, not impulsive. Calm replaces urgency. Satisfaction replaces stimulation. Becoming a controlled person also changes your relationship with money permanently. Money stops being emotional. It stops being a reward, a coping mechanism, or a measure of worth. It becomes neutral, and neutrality is power. When money no longer controls your mood, You make better decisions. When you're not desperate for outcomes, you negotiate better. When you're not reacting to pressure, you choose long-term stability over short-term relief. This is self-mastery. Not domination over others, not force, not intensity. Quiet authority over yourself. You don't announce it. You don't explain it. You live it. And over time, people notice. They notice your calm. They notice your restraint. They notice your consistency. Opportunities follow not because you chase them, but because you've become reliable enough to handle them. This is where everything you've learned comes together. Control your mouth, and your words gain weight. Control your mind, and your focus sharpens. Control your mood, and your decisions stabilize. Control yourself, and your life aligns. Nothing here is dramatic. Nothing here is flashy. But it works, and it keeps working long after motivation fades. Becoming a controlled person is not an achievement. It's a commitment, one you renew quietly, every day, through standards you don't negotiate. This is the end of the audiobook. But it's the beginning of the identity. The moment you stop trying to control outcomes and start controlling yourself. Everything else finally falls into place. Control yourself. Everything else follows. If there is one truth this audiobook has returned to again and again, it is this. Your life does not move in the direction of your goals. It moves in the direction of your habits. Not the habits you talk about, not the habits you plan to start, the ones you live every day, especially when no one is watching. Control is not a dramatic act. It is quiet, repetitive, often invisible. And that is why it works. You've seen how words can either leak power or build authority. How an undisciplined mind creates chaos no matter how intelligent you are. How moods, when left unchecked, quietly sabotage decisions. How calm stabilizes judgment. How patience compounds. How self-control creates money not by chasing it, but by protecting it. None of this requires perfection. It requires consistency. The world will continue to reward noise, urgency, and reaction. It will keep pushing speed over clarity, stimulation over depth, appearance over substance. You don't need to fight that world. You just need to stop letting it pull you. Control is how you step out of the current. You don't need to control everything. You don't need to predict outcomes. You don't need to dominate situations. You need to control your inputs, your words, your attention, your reactions, your standards. When those are stable, outcomes become less chaotic. You stop cleaning up messes created by impulse. You stop apologizing for things you could have prevented. You stop losing energy to emotional decisions that never served you. Life becomes quieter. Not because it's empty, but because it's intentional. This is what self-mastery actually looks like. Not intensity, not force, not constant effort, but alignment between who you say you are and how you behave under pressure. The goal was never to become emotionless. The goal was to become reliable. Reliable to yourself, reliable in decisions, reliable in moments that test you. You will still feel anger, desire, doubt, excitement, fear. None of that disappears. What changes is who decides what happens next. No longer the mood, no longer the impulse, no longer the moment. You do. That shift may not feel dramatic at first, but over time it reshapes everything. Your finances stabilize because you stop reacting. Your relationships improve because you speak with intention. Your confidence grows because you trust yourself to hold your standards. Control builds trust. Trust builds options. Options build freedom. And freedom, real freedom, is not the ability to do whatever you want in the moment. It's the ability to choose what serves you long after the moment passes. You don't need to remember every sentence from this audiobook. You only need to remember one principle. Pause before you act. That pause is where power lives. In that pause, you reclaim your future from your impulses. You choose direction over distraction, structure over chaos. And slowly, quietly, your life begins to reflect the discipline you practice. Control is not something you achieve and move on from. It's something you return to daily. And every time you do, you strengthen it. Control yourself, and everything else will eventually fall into place.